I don't know if I can do this anymore. My wife's voice drifted through the bedroom door, barely above a whisper, but loud enough to stop my heart. I stood frozen in the hallway, 2 coffee cups trembling in my hands. One black for me, one with cream and 2 sugars for her, the way she's taken it for 10 years. I'm scared, she continued, her voice cracking. What if it's too late? What if he doesn't feel the same way about me anymore? Please, before we continue, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. My name is Maxwell. 38 years old, investment banker, husband to the woman I thought I knew everything about. But standing outside our bedroom on a random Tuesday morning, listening to my wife confess her doubts to someone who wasn't me, I realized I didn't know her at all anymore. I pushed the door open, trying to keep my expression neutral. Deborah's head snapped up from her laptop, and in one fluid motion she slammed it shut. Her face flushed crimson, not the gentle pink of embarrassment, but the deep red of being caught. "Hey," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. "Brought you coffee." "Thank you." She took the cup but wouldn't meet my eyes. Her hands shook slightly. On the nightstand her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly turned it face down. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, setting my cup down and sitting on the edge of the bed. "No one." The lie came too quickly, too practiced. "Just work stuff." But I'd seen the reflection in the window behind her. Whatever was on that laptop screen, it wasn't a work spreadsheet. It looked like photographs. Old ones. And she'd been crying while she laughed. I could see the tear tracks on her cheeks even as she smiled now. "You've been working a lot lately," I said carefully. We were in dangerous territory now, the kind of conversation that could go sideways fast. "Everything okay with the Henderson account?" "It's fine. Just busy." She took a sip of coffee, still not looking at me. "Weren't you heading into the office early today?" It was a dismissal. Gentle but unmistakable. I stood, kissed the top of her head. She stiffened slightly, and that hurt more than if she'd pushed me away and left for work. But I couldn't focus. Couldn't think. All day, her words echoed in my mind. What if he doesn't feel the same way about me anymore? That night, after Deborah claimed exhaustion and went to bed at 9, I did something I'd never done in 10 years of marriage. I checked our credit card statements. 3 charges I didn't recognize. Flora's Boutique Florist, $347. Riverside Printing Company, $892. Artisan Canvas and Supply, $634. I sat in my study until 3 in the morning, staring at those numbers, trying to make them mean anything other than what my gut was screaming. My wife was planning something, and she was hiding it from me. The next morning, Deborah left her phone on the kitchen counter. In 10 years of marriage, she'd never done that. Not once. It sat there like a confession, screen dark, waiting. I stared at it for 5 full minutes. My coffee grew cold. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. This was the moment, the point where I either trusted my wife or didn't. Where our marriage either survived or it didn't. I picked up the phone. It unlocked. She hadn't changed the password, our anniversary 0614. That small detail made my chest ache. I opened her messages and saw dozens from someone named JJ. The latest message made my blood run cold. "Are you sure he won't find out before the day? This is getting risky." Deborah's response, "I know. But I have to do this perfectly. He deserves that much." I scrolled up with trembling fingers. More messages. "Did you finish the letters? The venue confirmed for next month. Have you told him about us yet?" "About us? About us?" I scrolled further and saw a photo attachment. My finger hovered over it. This was it. The evidence I didn't want but couldn't stop seeking. "Were you looking at my phone?" I spun around. Deborah stood in the doorway, her hair wet from the shower, her face pale. The softness I'd married had been replaced by something hard, something guarded. I fumbled, trying to set the phone down casually. It buzzed. I thought it might be important. "So you unlocked it?" Her voice was ice. "You went through my messages?" "Deborah, who's JJ? What are you planning? What is he talking about?" "Stop." She crossed the room and snatched the phone from my hand. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to accuse me of anything when you've been—" She stopped herself, her jaw clenching. "When I've been what?" "Nothing. Forget it." She turned toward the bedroom and I grabbed her arm gently. "Baby, please. Just talk to me. Whatever's going on. You don't understand what I've been trying to do for us." Her voice cracked and suddenly she looked less angry and more terrified. "You're so busy thinking the worst of me that you can't see I'm drowning too." She pulled away and locked herself in the bedroom. I stood alone in the kitchen, her phone's buzz the only sound. Another message from JJ. I couldn't see it, but I didn't need to. My wife was keeping secrets, and I was running out of time to figure out why. Thursday afternoon, I left work early with her favorite sushi, spicy tuna rolls from the place on Morrison Street where we had our first date. Maybe if I showed her I was trying, we could talk. Really talk. The receptionist at Deborah's office looked confused when I asked for Mrs. Maxwell. She left hours ago, Mr. Maxwell. Around 10. Said she had an appointment. My stomach dropped. An appointment? That's all she said. Is everything all right? I drove home, but her car wasn't there. I drove to her mother's house, not there either. I called her phone 3 times. No answer. By the 4th ring, I was convinced something terrible had happened. By the 5th, I realized something terrible was happening, just not the kind I'd imagined. I found her car parked outside a small community center in Riverside, a neighborhood we never visited. Through the large front windows, I could see into what looked like a classroom. And there she was. Deborah sat at a small desk, surrounded by other people, writing furiously in a notebook. She looked focused, intense, the way she used to look when she'd sketch in the park on Sunday mornings back when we first dated. Back when money was tight and love was easy. A man sat down next to her. Young, maybe 30, with glasses and a kind face. He leaned over to look at her notebook, said something that made her smile. Actually smile, the real one I hadn't seen in months, and put his hand on her shoulder. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I watched for 15 minutes. Watched him help her with whatever she was writing. Watched her laugh at something he said. Watched them pack up together, walk toward the parking lot together, stand by her car talking for another 5 minutes. Then she drove away and I followed her home, staying 3 cars back. When I walked in 20 minutes after she did, she was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, looking exhausted. Hey, she said softly. How was work? Fine. I couldn't look at her. You? Long day. I'm going to bed early. She kissed my cheek and disappeared upstairs. I sat alone in the living room, that image burned into my brain. My wife smiling at another man the way she used to smile at me. The private investigator's office smelled like cheap coffee and cheaper cologne. His name was Donald Rivers, and he came highly recommended by a colleague who'd used him during his own divorce. I hated that word. Divorce. But sitting in that cramped office, looking at the manila folder on his desk, I couldn't pretend anymore. Mr. Maxwell, Rivers said, sliding the folder toward me. Your wife has been visiting the same location every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 months. The Riverside Community Center. He laid out photos. Deborah entering the building. Deborah having coffee with the young man. Deborah sitting in her car afterward, her face buried in her hands. This man, Rivers tapped a photo, is Jordan Jackson. Age 32. He's a creative writing instructor. Teaches evening classes at the community center. Writing? I stared at the photo. What is she writing? Rivers shrugged. That's where it gets strange. She's also been meeting with Father Thomas from St. Augustine's Church, a wedding planner named Sarah Chin, and someone from Riverside Printing. Here. He showed me more photos. Deborah shaking hands with an older priest. Deborah in a bridal shop, though she wasn't trying on dresses. She was looking at something on a tablet. Deborah crying in a coffee shop while a woman with a portfolio sat across from her. Mr. Maxwell, I think your wife is planning something big. My mouth went dry. Like what? I don't know. But here's what doesn't make sense. He pulled out a final photo, time-stamped from yesterday. Deborah sitting in her car outside our house at 2 in the morning, her face illuminated by her phone screen. Every time she leaves these meetings, she sits alone and cries like her heart is breaking. Whatever she's planning, she's terrified. I drove home in a fog. My wife was taking writing classes. Meeting with priests and wedding planners. Crying alone in parking lots. Either she was leaving me or something else was happening. Something I couldn't see. That night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe. She'd fallen asleep crying. I could tell from the hitching in her breath, the way she curled away from me. I wanted to wake her. Demand answers. But I was terrified of what she might say. My mother-in-law called at 11 p.m. on Friday. Patricia never called late. Wealth, she said, her voice urgent. I need to tell you something. Deborah made me promise not to, but I can't watch this anymore. I sat up in bed, careful not to wake Deborah beside me. What's wrong? She thinks she's losing you. The words didn't make sense. What? She thinks you're having an affair, Wealth? She's been destroying herself thinking you don't love her anymore. The room spun. That's insane. I would never. Because you've been distant. Working late. Secretive about your phone. She found a receipt for jewelry in your jacket 2 months ago. Jewelry she never received. The birthday surprise. The vintage music box I'd special ordered. I'd hidden the receipt in my jacket and forgotten about it. Patricia, I'm not having an affair. That jewelry is for her birthday. I know. I figured that out. But she doesn't know that. She thinks you bought it for someone else. I felt sick. Why didn't she just ask me? Patricia's laugh was bitter. Because I taught her not to. When her father and I were having problems, I confronted him about his secrets. Turns out he wasn't cheating, he was in debt, too ashamed to tell me. But by the time the truth came out, I'd already filed for divorce. I told Deborah, if you think someone's leaving, don't confront them and speed it up. Either fix it or accept it. She paused. I gave her terrible advice, Wealth. And now she's trying to fix a marriage that isn't even broken. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for an hour. Then I got up and did something I'd never done before. I searched our bedroom. In the back of her closet, behind shoe boxes, I found a leather journal. I opened it with shaking hands. Day 73, he worked through dinner again. I ate alone. The house is so quiet now. I tried to remember the last time he looked at me the way he used to, and I couldn't. When did we stop being us? Day 89, I saw him smile at his phone today. He quickly hid it when I walked in. My stomach dropped. I wanted to ask who texted him, but I'm too afraid of the answer. What if it's her? What if there really is someone else? I flipped through pages of pain, each entry dated, each one showing me my wife's slow unraveling. Then I reached page 47. Day 103, I packed a bag today. Sat on our bed for 2 hours, trying to find the courage to leave before he leaves me first. But then I found our old memory box in the closet. I read every note he ever wrote me. You make me feel like I can survive anything. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. That man still exists somewhere. I have to believe that. So I've made my decision. It's risky and he might think I'm crazy. But if I don't do this, I'll lose him forever. The next entry was dated yesterday, day 156. Jordan says my vows are beautiful. Father Thomas confirmed next month. Sarah has the venue booked. Everything is falling into place. But I'm terrified, Wealth. What if you don't feel the same way anymore? What if I'm fighting for something that's already dead? Vows. Venue. Next month. She wasn't leaving me. She was planning something for us. But what? Saturday night, Deborah came home at midnight with mud on her dress. I was waiting in the living room. When she walked in, my heart stopped. Her white dress was torn at the hem, streaked with dirt. Scratches covered her hands. Paint, or was it ink? Stained her fingernails. What happened? I crossed to her, reaching for her hands. Are you hurt? I'm fine. She pulled away, not meeting my eyes. It was a long day. Deborah, you're covered in mud. Where were you? I can't tell you yet. Can't or won't. She looked at me then, her eyes exhausted and defiant. Both. She walked past me to the bathroom. I heard the shower start. I went outside to her car and opened the trunk. A shovel. Covered in fresh mud. My mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. What could she possibly? The security camera. We'd installed one last year after the break-ins on Cedar Street. I pulled up the footage on my phone. Rewound to 2 a.m. that morning. And there she was, Deborah in that white dress, walking into our backyard with the shovel, kneeling by the oak tree and digging. She buried something. A box maybe. Something wrapped in cloth. When she came back inside, I was sitting at the kitchen table. I saw the footage, I said quietly. She froze, water dripping from her hair onto the tile. What did you bury? For a long moment she just stared at me. Then something in her face crumbled. You wouldn't understand. Try me. No. Her voice was small, broken. Not yet. Please, Wealth. Just trust me for a few more weeks. Trust you? You're sneaking around, lying to me, burying things in our yard at 2 a.m? I know how it looks. She was crying now, really crying. I know. And I wish I could tell you. But if I do it now, it'll ruin everything. Everything I've been working for. Please. She went to bed. I stayed up all night, staring at that spot in the backyard, wondering what my wife had hidden there. Wondering who she'd become. Sunday at 3 a.m. I woke to an empty bed. I'd been sleeping lightly for days now, always waiting for her to leave again. I looked out the window and saw her car pulling away, headlights cutting through the darkness. I followed her. She drove through empty streets, ran a red light and headed toward downtown. I stayed far back, my heart pounding. Where was she going at 3 a.m? She stopped at Riverside Park. Our park. The place where we'd first met. I parked behind a delivery truck and watched as she got out of her car, walked to our bench, the same one where she'd sketched me 10 years ago when I was a burned-out junior analyst and she was a struggling art teacher, and sat down. For an hour she just sat there, alone, crying. I wanted to go to her. My hand was on the door handle a dozen times. But something held me back. This felt private, sacred. Like I was witnessing something I wasn't meant to see. Finally, she pulled out her phone and made a call. Even from the distance I could hear her voice crack. I don't know if I can do this anymore. What if it's too late? What if he doesn't feel the same way about me anymore? The same words from that Tuesday morning. But now, hearing them in this place, surrounded by the ghost of who we used to be, they hit different. She listened to whoever was on the other end, then said, "You remind me of what we used to have. Before everything fell apart. Thank you for helping me remember what love is supposed to feel like." My chest tightened. Who was she talking to? She sat there for another 10 minutes, then drove home. I waited 5 minutes before following. When I got home, she was in bed, pretending to be asleep. I lay beside her, both of us awake, both of us pretending, the space between us feeling like miles. I thought about my father. How he'd sat me down when I was 12 and said, "Son, I love your mother. But love isn't enough when you can't provide. I'm leaving so she can find someone better." He walked out that night. Never came back. I built my entire life around never being like him. Work harder. Make more money. Never give anyone a reason to leave. But lying there next to Deborah, I realized maybe I'd become him anyway. Just in a different way. Monday afternoon, I heard her in the garage. I'd come home early, planning to finally confront her. But when I opened the door, I heard her voice, soft, loving, saying words that destroyed me. "I love you so much. You've saved me these past few months. I don't know what I would have done without you." I pressed myself against the wall, listening. Pause. No, he doesn't know yet. I'm scared of what he'll think when he finds out about us. About us. There it was. Finally. The confirmation. But then she said something that made no sense. "You remind me of what we used to have. Before everything fell apart. Before we lost." Her voice broke. "Thank you for helping me remember what love is supposed to feel like." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. I walked into the garage. She was sitting in her car, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, her face went white. "I have to go," she said quickly and hung up. We stared at each other. "Who was that?" I asked. "A friend." "What friend tells you they love you?" She got out of the car slowly. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because from where I'm standing, it's pretty clear." "No." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "I'm trying to." She stopped, frustrated, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this right now. I can't explain and ruin." She pushed past me into the house. That night, I slept in the guest room. The painted yellow guest room that used to be a nursery before everything changed. 2 years ago, Deborah was pregnant. 16 weeks. We'd painted this room yellow together, argued about baby names, bought tiny socks we'd never use. Then the heartbeat stopped. She grieved openly, wanting to talk about it, process it together. I'd shut down completely, threw myself into work, convinced myself that if I made more money, got better insurance, a bigger house, next time everything would be okay. We never talked about what we lost. Just boxed up the tiny socks and painted over our dreams. Maybe that's when we started losing each other. Her birthday morning arrived like a death sentence. I'd barely slept. My surprise, the vintage music box, the romantic dinner reservation, the flowers, felt meaningless now. But I was going through with it anyway. Maybe if I showed her how much I loved her, she'd choose me. Choose us. My phone buzzed. A text from Deborah, "Please come home at 5 p.m. Don't be late. This is important." This was it. The moment she'd tell me everything. The moment our marriage either survived or ended. I left work at 4 with the gifts, my hands shaking so badly I could barely drive. When I pulled up to our house, all the curtains were drawn. Her car was in the driveway. The house was dark except for a single lamp in the window. I walked up the steps like a man approaching his own execution. Opened the door. Photographs covered the hallway floor. A trail of them leading upstairs. Our wedding day. Our first apartment. Vacations. Christmas mornings. Every year of our marriage laid out like evidence. At the end of the trail, I heard crying coming from our bedroom. I followed the photos, my heart breaking with each step. At our bedroom door, I stopped. The door was cracked open and through it I could see her. Deborah sat on the floor surrounded by hundreds of handwritten letters, journals, photo albums, craft supplies. She was building something on our wall, a massive timeline of our entire relationship. Every date. Every memory. Every moment we'd shared for 10 years. She was sobbing as she worked, her hands shaking as she wrote in a journal. On the wall I saw ticket stubs from our first date, the napkin from our engagement dinner, dried flowers from every anniversary, letters she'd written but never sent. And in the center, a large board titled, "Why I Would Choose You Again, 1,000 Reasons." She hadn't noticed me. She kept writing, her voice breaking. Reason 847, the way he still brings me coffee even when we're fighting. Reason 848, how he holds my hand in his sleep, like he's afraid I'll disappear. Reason 849, the way he laughs at my terrible jokes even when he's had the worst day. I couldn't hold back the sob that tore from my throat. Deborah spun around, her eyes wide with shock and horror. For a moment we just stared at each other, her surrounded by evidence of her desperate love, me standing in the doorway with flowers and a music box, both of us broken. "Well, no, you weren't supposed to," she scrambled to hide the letters, the photos, trying to cover what she'd been building. "This isn't ready. You weren't supposed to see this yet. It's for next month, for our anniversary. I was going to." But I was already across the room, dropping to my knees, pulling her into my arms. "I thought you were leaving me," I choked out. The words I'd been holding in for months came flooding out. "I thought you found someone else. I thought you stopped loving me." The late nights, the secrets, the phone calls, that man at the community center. She pulled back shocked. "Jordan? My writing instructor?" Understanding dawned on her face. "Oh my God. You thought I was having an affair? What was I supposed to think? You were sneaking around, lying, meeting with some guy, telling him you loved him?" "That was my sister." She was crying and laughing at the same time. "I called Lauren to thank her for helping plan the vow renewal ceremony. I've been taking writing classes so I could write my own vows. Jordan's been teaching me how to express what I'm feeling because I've forgotten how. The late nights were me working with a calligrapher. The secrets were coordinating with our families. The priest, the wedding planner, it's all for our anniversary next month." I stared at her. "But I heard you say you were losing me. That you thought I didn't love you anymore. Because I do think that." She grabbed my face, forcing me to look at her. "You've been distant for months. Working late, secretive with your phone, hiding receipts. I found a jewelry receipt in your jacket and..." She stopped. "I thought you bought it for someone else. I thought you were leaving me for someone younger, someone better, someone who could give you the family I couldn't." The miscarriage. She was still carrying that weight. "The jewelry is for your birthday," I whispered. "Today. I've been planning this surprise for months. The late nights were me taking extra accounts so I could afford everything. The secrets were me coordinating with the jeweler and the restaurant where we had our first date." We stared at each other and suddenly it was absurd. Horrifyingly, heartbreakingly absurd. "We've been living parallel nightmares," she said quietly. I pulled the music box from my bag. "I got you this. The vintage one you wanted when we first got married. We couldn't afford it then." She opened it and a soft melody filled our bedroom. The same song that played at our wedding. She started crying harder. "I've been writing you letters," she said, showing me the journals. "1,000 reasons why I'd choose you again. Every moment I fell in love with you. Every memory that made me want to fight for us." She showed me the wall. Our entire relationship mapped out in photographs and notes. The good times and the hard times. The laughter and the tears. "What about the muddy dress?" I asked. "The shovel?" She laughed through her tears. "I buried a time capsule in our backyard. Letters to our future selves. Photos. Memories. I wanted to bury the pain of the last year and plant something new. And the 3 a.m. trips to the park? I was practicing my vows alone. I was so terrified I'd forgotten how to tell you I love you that I needed to practice where we first met. Where I first saw you. We sat on the floor surrounded by a decade of memories and talked for hours. Really talked, for the first time in months. Maybe years. She told me about finding the jewelry receipt and thinking the worst. About calling her mother, who told her not to confront me because confrontation had destroyed her parents' marriage. About deciding to fight for us silently, desperately, alone. I told her about my father leaving. About the promise I made to never let her struggle financially. About working 70-hour weeks to provide while forgetting to actually be present. "I thought if I gave you everything," I said, "you'd never have a reason to leave. But I gave you everything except me." She took my hand. "I thought if I fixed myself, made myself better, proved I was still worth loving, you'd fall in love with me again. But I was already enough." We both were. The sun rose on her 35th birthday, and we were still sitting there, surrounded by proof that love doesn't die from one big moment. It dies from 1,000 small silences. I need to tell you something, Deborah said quietly. She showed me another journal entry from 2 years ago. The day we lost the baby, I wrote this. He won't talk about it. He won't even look at the ultrasound photos. I think he blames me. I think he wishes he'd never tried for a family with me. My chest constricted. I never blamed you. Not for 1 second. Then why wouldn't you talk about it? Because I was terrified you blamed me. For not being successful enough to give you the best doctors, the best care. I thought if I worked harder, made more money, next time I could protect you from that pain. She laughed bitterly. So you were grieving by working. And I was grieving by crying. And we thought we were grieving differently when really we were grieving the same thing, losing each other. I never stopped loving you, I said. Not for 1 second of any day in the last 10 years. I never stopped loving you either. But somewhere along the way we stopped showing it. She showed me the timeline on the wall. Every moment we'd shared. And in the center, the empty frame labeled Today. What's that for? I asked. For the day we almost lost each other but chose to fight instead. I wanted to remember that love isn't about never having problems. It's about fighting through them together. We took a photo, both of us tear-stained, exhausted, and more in love than we'd been in years, and placed it in the empty frame. 1 month later, we stood in that same park where we'd met. Our families surrounded us. The priest who'd helped Deborah plan everything stood before us. Marriage isn't one moment, Father Thomas said. It's 1,000 moments of choosing each other. Today, Wealth and Deborah choose again. Deborah read her vows, the ones she'd been secretly writing for months. I choose you when you're late from work. I choose you when we're too tired to talk. I choose you when grief makes us forget how to love. I choose you in the silence and the storms. I choose you today, tomorrow, and every day after. I read mine, the ones I'd written in the days after our birthday revelation. I thought providing meant money. But providing means time, attention, presence. I thought protecting you meant working harder. But protecting you means being here when the world gets heavy. I choose to be here. With you. For all of it. We exchanged new rings, simple bands engraved with Day 1 of Forever. At the reception, Jordan, the writing instructor, approached us. I have to tell you, he said to me, every Tuesday and Thursday your wife would come to class and write about you. Love letters. Memories. Reasons why she'd choose you again. Most of my students write fiction. She wrote truth. Patricia, my mother-in-law, hugged me with tears in her eyes. Thank you for fighting for her. For fighting for each other. I wish I'd done the same. That night, we dug up the time capsule Deborah had buried. Inside were letters she'd written during our worst moments. Day 103, I almost left today. But I didn't. Because I believe in us. Day 127, I saw him smile today and I remembered why I fell in love with him. We read them together and cried together. I was so scared you'd given up on us, she whispered. I was terrified you already had, I said. We sat under the oak tree where she'd buried our pain and planted our hope. The same tree that had witnessed our almost ending and our new beginning. We're going to make it, she said. It wasn't a question. We already did, I answered. Because the truth is, marriage isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to heal together. About fighting for each other even when you think you're fighting alone. About recognizing that the person you're about to lose might be fighting just as hard to keep you. We almost lost everything because we stopped talking. We saved everything because we finally started listening. And that empty frame on our bedroom wall? It's not empty anymore. It holds a photo of two people who broke and chose to mend. Who forgot and chose to remember. Who almost walked away but chose to stay. The caption reads, "The day we found each other again." Because sometimes the greatest love story isn't about never losing each other. It's about deciding you're worth finding.